Hello, 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 and welcome to an extra super duper special episode 50 of Exposing Ourselves. This is the podcast where we expose ourselves to new things. Usually, Travis, a movie buff, assigns me one of his favorite films, and I, a music nerd, give him one of my favorite artists to listen to. But this week, the opposite is true. Don't worry, it will all make sense soon. I'm your host, Matt Runquist, and with me, as always, is my very good friend.
Travis Ritchie. Hey, Matt.
Hey,
In
Travis.
this episode, will be let's see. I I watched the movie Dick, and you listened to Hope Fire by Keith Hampton.
This is going very well. Very well.
This is
Nobody
our
got
this is our
confused.
extra very special episode. You know, it's funny. I was worried about all the superlatives we were putting in front of this. Like, what if we want to do something like mega ultra special for episode 100?
Then we'll do something ultra mega.
Oh, I suppose so.
Yeah.
I guess I just solved our problem.
Yeah, exactly. That was perfect. That was
All right, great.
absolutely perfect. Well, Travis, how was
Yeah.
your week?
Oh, it was busy and lots of nothing new. I worked a lot. Today and yesterday were days where I had to like bike down to Hollywood to my doctor. So yesterday I went down for a vaccination and then had to ride back, quickly do like a Zoom meeting or something, uh, and then go to work. And then this morning I had to ride down, do my I had an acupuncture appointment, and then ride back really quick, take care of Coco in between all the riding and things, and then go to work. And then I just got off of work, rode home, walked Coco, and then came to do this. So it's been a lot, but I had 2 days off in a row, which felt
Okay.
weird because I haven't had any days off for about a month and a half.
Yeah, you've been
And
hitting it pretty hard.
I have. And so Friday, I went on a hike with Coco, which was great. I haven't been on a running hike in so long. And my back had been hurting me a little bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've had several different back problems, but a while back I herniated a disc in my lower spine. And occasionally it crops up as a little recurring thing. But a hike is generally pretty good for back problems,
Okay.
depending on the back problem. But
Yeah.
it felt great, and so good, in fact, that the next day, Saturday, I was able to play some ultimate frisbee, which
That
I
is
enjoyed.
great news
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
know Ultimate can be pretty hard on the body. It's a lot of fun, but it is
it's very
not a sport
intense,
for bowl. It's not like bowling or something where you can just,
which is
hang
more of a
out.
game than a sport. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think the professional bowlers would disagree with you.
Okay, I mean, bring it on. I'm not afraid of a bowler.
I'm not afraid of a bowl, and you should not be afraid of a bowler
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
for
grew up in
sure.
Wisconsin. I know what bowling's all about.
Yeah.
Oh, Coco's trying to climb on my lap. I let her out of the
Oh, she's
cage.
so cute.
Yeah, do you want to come up here,
Well,
baby? I mean, you can be up on my lap for the show, and we'll see how this works. Since we're on, and you can see Coco. You can see Coco if you tune into our YouTube channel, which is Exposing Ourselves, and you can see our we post this video, and eventually we'll be doing live streams. So you can
yeah.
tune into us on our Facebook page at Exposing Ourselves, or where else might we do that? Probably YouTube too.
Yeah, probably YouTube and Facebook for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So how was your week, my friend?
Well, it was an incredibly exciting week. As you know, I am currently in Florida, but that is
Yeah.
only after briefly traveling back to Milwaukee or to Wisconsin to watch my daughter graduate from college. So I got a very inexpensive ticket on an airline, on a discount airline. And on Saturday around 3 in the afternoon, I flew home to Milwaukee, had a friend pick me up at the airport, slept in my own bed for the night, that drove to Madison the next morning, watched her graduate, had lunch with my family and her fiance, and then came back to Milwaukee, had a D&D session with my D&D friends,
Oh, fun.
fell asleep, woke up, and flew back to Florida. So it was a busy, busy week for me. And of course, we've been painting this house the whole time too.
That's
So
incredible. Now, it is crazy that your daughter is graduating college. I remember rolling
not
around in the front
graduating,
yard.
graduated.
Graduated.
She's done.
It's amazing that she has graduated. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember rolling around the front yard with her when she was 4 or something. I don't know.
Something like that. She was pretty young. Yeah.
Oh man, that means you know what that means. We
That
are old,
it does mean, well, it means I'm old. You're not old, but I am for
older,
yeah,
not old.
not old. Yeah, no, it was wonderful. I got all those uh what are they called? Pride? I think it was called Pride. Yeah,
Oh
I
wow,
the
you had
feelings
pride?
of pride and
Yeah, yeah.
parental, you know, good feeling.
Like
It
a
was really wild.
like the idea that you did a job well done raising her to be a success in her goals.
Well, and I don't want to take too much credit at all for that.
Why
I've
not?
always because I think that while it's important not to mess your kids up, they are individuals from a very young age. And
Yeah,
for me, at least, parenting was all about making sure that I gave her the best possible, home life
yeah.
and guidance, but all of the hard work and everything, that all is hers. And she certainly didn't get that to me. I'm not a very hard worker at all. And so I'll take the credit for like not messing her up, but I'm very, very proud of her. She's a double major. She graduated with distinction in 3.5 years. Really, really great job. And
Wow.
she's really awesome. I hope if she ever listens to one of our podcasts, I hope she listens to this one because she did a great job.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And these are all things that you couldn't tell her in person, but you feel comfortable telling me, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, I would never say this out loud to her. No, of course I did in fact tell her at the dinner and also at the graduation that how proud I was of her and
Oh, that's
everything.
great.
So,
For what it's worth, if Coco is a good dog, I take full credit for that.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, cuz dogs are
So
terrible, and so if one is by some sort of chance circumstance good, it's obviously the owner's fault.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just I feel like taking credit for the things that I you know raise
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beings I help
If I
birth.
feed you, I want credit.
That's
That's
exactly right. So this is why I think you should have felt free to take credit for your daughter's success. That's all.
Well, I have now graduated from Minnesota and Wisconsin. So
Nice, nice.
only a few more Big Ten schools to go, and I can have the whole
Okay,
conference,
good.
a full
Well,
set.
good luck with that. I have not from either.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true. That's all right.
yeah, it is true.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
college degrees are worthless.
Yeah, essentially just pieces of paper.
Just pieces of paper.
Well, so would you like?
Drop
I'm
out
sure
of
this is
school,
all
kids.
fascinating to
Drop
the
out
people
right
listening.
now.
Yeah. Do you want to get into the meat?
I would love to get into the meat of this episode, but I'm going to make you pick how we're going to
Ah,
switch things up this week.
well, let's switch things up and do the movie first. So,
Okay.
if
Well,
you would,
Travis,
please tell me about Dick.
I will tell you as much as I know about Dick. It's a 1999 comedy with a fascinating cast. A few people from SNL, but the two leads are Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams, who obviously both went on to pretty big careers in movies. Michelle Williams, of course, we saw a few weeks ago in Brokeback Mountain, and Kirsten Dunst was very famously in Bring It On, which I hear you almost accidentally watched this week. And then a whole bunch of other. She was in an interview in The Vampire when she was young, and she's had a very successful career throughout the 2000s and 2010s. So um, these are pretty high horsepower actresses, but this is a comedy about two 15-year-old girls who accidentally interact with the Watergate scandal in a bunch of ways. I know last week I told you they were deep throat, but really they they're the ones who are responsible for the burglars being discovered. They wander through the White House and interact with pretty much all the famous names from the Watergate scandal.
Hmm.
Along with like Henry Kissinger, they see Brezhnev in the White House. They really, for a while, it's almost a Forrest Gumpy situation where
Yeah,
they're interacting with the White House
yeah,
over and over
and
again
influencing history.
and influencing
Influencing events.
history.
It's not just they're not passive. So
Yeah.
I was that Forrest
I
Gump comparison was really apt.
Yeah, I really just I love the way that this movie integrates real historical events, good comedy, funny acting, hilarious costumes, hilarious like set design and everything. I think it's all wonderful. I really enjoy the experience of watching this movie, and it made almost no money. I was looking it up just before this because I did my research, and its opening week it made $2.2 million on its way to, I think, making less than 10 million domestic overall.
Yeah, I think
It
six
was
was 6.3
it
total.
was not a successful movie, but I think it should have been. It's funny. What'd you think, Travis?
Well, Matt, so this movie made me think about why I don't give you comedies much, because I'm very picky, very, I don't know, a little ornery about my comedy. Like, I am a comedy guy first and foremost. Like, I have years of training in sketch comedy and writing and stuff like that, and so I tend to be very what is the word that's not picky, but I don't know. Help me out here. What am I thinking of?
It sounds like picky, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like picky, but there's another word that I was going for. But yeah, so I can. It's challenging for a comedy to be something that really appeals to me, and this comedy did not, despite so many. I want to say interesting, but listening to last week's podcast, I say interesting so much on the show. I want to like a beep every time I say interesting so I can get myself out of that habit. But there are a lot of great things about this movie. Like, on
Hmm.
paper, it's like there's a movie I saw called Insomnia with Robin Williams and like uh who was it? Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, I think, and it's in a Christopher Nolan movie. And you're like, on paper, all of these things should equal a good movie, but for
Hmm.
some reason, it's not. And on paper, everything in this movie should equal a good movie, but it didn't really strike me as fun. It was interesting. Like, I thought first off that Kristen Dunst and Michelle Williams played the dumb teen girl
Hmm.
trope less successfully than I have seen it in other places. I'm thinking Clueless. I'm thinking Mean Girls type of thing. Like,
Hmm.
I just didn't really believe them. Like, I feel
Mm.
like they were playing more sketch characters than movie characters, so it was almost too broad for me. I
Mm.
enjoyed Dan Hyetta as Nixon. I think he did great. He bought everything to the role that he should have.
Yeah,
I
because
really loved.
Dan Hedaya doesn't really look like Nixon at all, but he just does Nixon so well that you find it very believable, even though
You
there's
sit there
not.
and you're like, oh, this am I watching? It was convincing. Like, I thought I was. Your brain kind of tricks you and is like, oh, this is what Nixon looked like.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was really nice. I loved seeing Terry Garr. I mean, I
right?
always love seeing Terry Garr, and some other people popped up that you just don't really think about. I like Ryan Reynolds. This is one of his early movies, and
It
suddenly
is very
Ryan
much.
Reynolds pops up
Yeah,
as the kid,
yeah.
and
Oh, and French
he's
Stewart right at the beginning.
French Stewart, isn't it? Yeah, Anna Gasteyer as the White House secretary. Lots of great things about this. Um, the only thing I really liked, honestly,
Oh
was
God! Wow, the
sorry.
only thing you really liked. Wow.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I was kind of bored watching this movie, and I wanted to be more entertained by it, but it was more annoying to me than anything. I'm so sorry. Um, but what I did enjoy was, even though we've talked about how Will Ferrell often is a little too much in his movies especially when he's trying to play real characters. Um, I loved the
Bob
Woodward and
Woodward.
Bernstein
Yeah.
pair, and I loved that they were playing them as two guys that can't stand each other.
Hmm.
It's not that they can't stand each other, but Woodward can't stand Bernstein.
Well, I
And
mean, I think they can't stand each other, and I think that's actually kind of a long running trope is that they're known for doing all their investigative stuff together, but supposedly, I think everybody is like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if they just hate each other, right? You know?
oh, I had never heard that, but it's like two names seldom have gone together
Hmm.
so like inextricably
Yeah,
than those two, and so you always hear Woodward and Bernstein. I mean, I guess
right. And I guess
Bob Woodward
the
is
joke
a bit
is
of
that they don't like each other, right?
yeah, and I really enjoyed that relationship on screen. But other than that, even even Ryan Reynolds, who I really like, and I thought he was good in this as far as early roles go. He hadn't yet gotten to his Ryan Reynoldsness that he reached in kind of Van Wilder, only a year later, I think. So Dave Foley, I'm a big fan of. He's from Kids in the Hall, and
Hmm.
Bruce McCullough, who played
Hmm.
Bernstein. They're from Kids in the Hall, and I love those guys so much. And Dave Foley, I he was okay. He wasn't. He was. I don't know. They had like a mouth thing that he had to wear that he had to talk around like some sort of teeth prosthetics, and there was a moment where he is Ryan Reynolds has one of the girls in his bedroom, and
Hmm.
it's in Dave Foley's house, and he's one of
Hmm.
the White House people, and he has important things in there that are sensitive information, and so the girl is trying to it's the one played by Kirsten Dunst. So
Yeah.
she's got this long hair and she's trying to hide her face. And Dave is just doing this motion with his head, and
Hmm.
it's hysterical, just the way he was moving. That made me laugh, and I think that was
Nice.
the only laugh that I had
Hmm.
the entire movie. Um,
Wow. That is
yeah,
that is insanely harsh. Wow.
I'm
Um
so sorry because listen, I was sitting down to this movie despite the fact that I thought I was going to be watching Bring It On. And as you mentioned, I said it earlier before we started rolling, is that I didn't realize until I listened back to last week's episode which movie I was supposed to be watching. So, but I sat down, rented it, and I was all set for a nice, good laugh and a
mhm.
fun like romp. And
Well, and you know what?
I don't
This
know.
is a nice good laugh and it is a fun romp. Listener, I don't know how to apologize enough for Travis here. Like he is the fun police right now. I got to tell you, this movie is the ditzy joy of watching Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams just sort of like bubble up off the screen. I find them magnetic. I think they're funny as heck, and the ways in which they like interact with, I want to, all of the White House people, they have no interest whatsoever in like world politics or what's going on, and they're meeting all of these famous people, and they're super duper interested in Checkers the White House dog, which
Yeah.
is hilarious, right? I mean, it's just funny, and they play it really really well. And there's an extended sequence where Michelle Williams, who is previously very very interested in Bobby Sherman is the love of her life. She uh she gets infatuated with Dick Nixon for a while, and all of the uh things, pictures in her room, and she writes in her diary about him, and she eventually, the funniest bit in the entire film is the fact that she records a 18 and a half minute message to Richard Nixon, which then he has to erase, which is the explanation for the mysterious 18 and a half minute silence on the Watergate tapes.
Oh,
Which,
interesting.
if you
See,
don't know
honestly,
that, yeah,
I
did you
didn't
not know
remember
that?
that tidbit. I mean, I now that you say it, I it rings a bell. But honestly, in the moment, I was like, that none of that makes. I was like, why is this scene here? Type
No,
of thing.
that is incredibly funny. Because of course Kirsten Dunst has to walk the dog alone, and when she comes back in, she very specifically says, "Oh my gosh, you've been recording for 18 and a half minutes." And if you know anything about the Watergate scandal, that is hilarious. And if you don't know anything about the Watergate scandal, you don't laugh, and it turns out you don't like the movie. Um,
I can see how it's clever, but
this movie is clever in so many ways. I think it's really slick how they introduce all of these characters who are fundamentally like middle-aged white guys at the
uh-huh.
beginning of the movie. Um, at the beginning of the movie, the girls show up in the White House and they're introduced to a bunch of major players in the Watergate scandal, and the movie is very slick about explaining who each person is in a way that does not feel like super duper forced or anything. They're like, "Hey, I'm John Dean and G. Gordon Liddy," and people will say a different character's name, and I felt like it was super duper naturalistic, and frankly, way better movie making than is necessary in a light, fluffy comedy about two ditzy 15-year-old girls.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that though you mentioned the Forrest Gumpiness of it all, and there is a delight to that that you it's kind of a rewriting history. It's
Mm-hmm.
like but everything you've heard is true, but you don't know the other things,
Right.
and it's like it's actually all this girl,
Yeah.
and I like that kind of thing. I'm actually working on a script kind of like that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it I don't know. I feel like Forrest Gump did it better. And one of the ways that it did it better was that it wasn't like in this one the dog was kind of the catalyst for a bunch of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's dog realization, dog realization, dog realization. And maybe I would have liked it better if it was if their motivations were more complicated. Moving into I don't know. It just felt a little redundant to have it just always be the dog that they were focusing on, which I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe my problem was it made them seem too dumb.
Mm.
Whereas Forrest Gump wasn't dumb; he was just simple, and I don't know if I liked that they were so I don't know dumb.
Yeah.
They can't type more than it takes. They can't type more than a word a minute,
Well, no,
and
sorry, not Michelle Williams. Kirsten Dunst
Kirsten,
couldn't type
right?
more than
Okay,
a
but
word a minute.
still, that's like far and above too slow for even the the dumbest person.
Well, but I thought that was explained by the fact that she kept getting distracted. Not that she literally couldn't type that fast, but that she kept.
It sure seemed like she was trying pretty hard to do all of her words and all of her letters, and I'm focused on my letters, and I don't know. I get that. The other thing was little dumb things that annoy me are the fact that they made such a point that they were making costumes at the end out of an American flag, but
Mm-hmm,
then the costumes that they show them wearing couldn't possibly have been made out of that flag because the
mm-hmm,
stripes are too narrow and the blah blah blah, and then it's like I'm like, I don't know, just little stuff like that. Just like,
mm,
especially since I will say they did a very good job, to my eye, of set design
mm-hmm.
and clothing design and costumes and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So it seemed
yeah.
like
Like I said earlier, it
being a
was a real
period piece.
highlight of the film.
Yeah, yeah, I'll give you that absolutely. But you know, art design doesn't a good movie make. That's all.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I think there's a lot to enjoy here that's not the art design. I just appreciate it. I will say I am not a huge appreciator of Will Ferrell, and I didn't love him in this either. He kind of does his Will Ferrell-y thing, and if you in general like Will Ferrell, I think you'll like this, and if you in general don't like Will Ferrell, you'll be like, why has Will Ferrell dropped himself into this movie and refused to act at all? He's just being Will Ferrell,
He's
you know.
being Will Ferrell, and that is appropriate sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Maybe not in a historical
not in this
drama or a
movie in
historical
particular. Not in
comedy.
this movie, and not in Barbie, and not in a couple things that we've seen this year.
Yeah.
It's funny though because when Will Ferrell is right for a role, it works
Hmm.
great. Like Elf, I love, and other than I don't know.
You just had a little misstatement there, but I definitely just
What did I
realized
say?
that if I ever get a sheep, I'm going to name him Wool Ferrell.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
That's a great name for a sheep.
Isn't it though? Really good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, anything else you'd like to talk about? You want to talk about the music at all?
in this
In
movie,
in Dick, yeah.
yeah. You know what? Some of the songs were actually really good. I really liked hearing about that '70s song. Now, the thought that kept popping up in my head was, is this music timed appropriately? Like, did this song actually exist when this movie is set?
I actually know the answer to this because I did
Yes, please
research
tell me.
ahead of time. Almost every single one of them was released before Watergate. The only ones that weren't were Lady Marmalade, which is like 6 months later, and then there was one other one that was like 2 years later. But of the 17-ish songs on the soundtrack, 15 of them were time appropriate. There's nothing wildly anachronistic.
Interesting. Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. I'm really glad to hear that.
You
I
love
don't know
that
if I
sort of
have
thing.
anything more to
All
add.
right, you have nothing more to add.
Now, I
Nothing,
guess my
nothing else you
question
want to say?
is, have you seen a lot of other like dumb blonde uh like movies? Like have you seen Mean Girls and have you
Mm-hmm.
seen Clueless in particular? Those are the two that
Yeah,
come to mind.
yeah. Clueless and Mean Girls are both classics, and I mean, I think Dick should be right up there with them. But clearly, the world does not agree with me about this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I and we know that both of these actresses are very good. I think that
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Williams is probably a better actress than Kirsten Dunst, but they're both certainly capable. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, if it wasn't an acting thing, maybe it was a directing thing that I have a problem with, where they were both directed to be too broad. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. It just didn't
Well,
it didn't tickle my fancy, bud. I'm sorry.
anyways, that's all right. So, what do you want to rate it?
Oh man, me first. Okay.
Yeah, the
Uh,
person who is the person being introduced
I
to it has to
know,
go
I know.
first.
The person being exposed rates first. It's gonna be below average. What did you rate Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? Because that's
I
my
want to
rating for
know.
this
I
movie.
want to know what your rating is for this.
Um, it's uh, oh man, it's a three.
I love that you're struggling with this so much.
It's a
It's a
three
three.
for me, and
It's a
I think that's
three.
a little. It might be being generous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So before we get into what my rating is for this, I want to remind you how gobsmacked you were about my rating for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse
Yeah, this
because
is I imagine that's what this feels like.
yeah, because I am a good person. I just looked up my rating for that. I gave Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a 4.
Oh,
I gave it a
wow.
4.
Okay. I
Yeah,
gave you a
and you
chance. I
you
would
were
have if
so
you had
you
told
were
me, I may
so
have given this a 4, but it's too late now.
no.
My
No.
rating is locked in.
No, see, this is because I knew that you were gonna sandbag this, and I wanted you to feel how ridiculous your reaction was to Spider-Man the Spider-Verse rating because it was barely below average, and you acted like I had shot a puppy.
It's just that for me that's a perfect movie. Is this for you a perfect movie?
No, not at all. This is probably an 8 for me. I think the thing that you maybe are forgetting is that I had a pretty tough row to hoe here because not only did I have to give you a movie that I really like, but I had to pick one that you hadn't seen, right? I couldn't just
Well,
like have
yeah.
you watch The Princess Bride, you know?
But I don't know what your history is with movies, but if you like any older movies, that would have been probably a safe bet because generally like pre Jaws, I probably haven't seen it unless it's like a huge classic. Like I still haven't seen Casablanca or Gone with the Wind or I don't know, anyone. It took me forever to see Citizen Kane. So long, in fact, that I was like, oh, Simpsons did that. Everything in Citizen Kane was a Simpsons reference.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Anyways, no,
Anyway,
this is an 8 for me. I really like it. I have very fond memories of watching it back in the day, and I still do occasionally pick it up and watch it. I do think it's a little bit of a underrated movie. Although if you look at it on like Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, it's like a 7.
mhm.
People it is generally well regarded but not loved, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, seven's pretty good. That's a passing grade.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
just and it might have been. I don't know why I didn't like it. I don't think I was in a mood or anything. I just was. It just wasn't funny to me.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it was. I do wish it was. I wish it was. I wish I liked it more.
Yeah, well,
For you,
yeah.
and for me,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
then I would have had a better time watching it.
Fair enough. Fair
All
enough.
right, all right, all right.
Well,
Let's move
Travis, yeah,
on.
let's move on. Please tell me about Keith Hampton's Hope Fire.
So Keith Hampton is a folk music artist who grew up in a tiny town called Lake Mills, Wisconsin, and he left his home and went off to school in the big city of Boston to go to Boston University to study music. And it's funny because he studied all this classical music stuff, opera and that kind of thing. But he really fell in love with the guitar and songwriting. And so what I gave you is his debut album called Hope Fire, and it has been an album that I've been listening to since it came out. And I was back in college, and I think the reason is that it I guess I was after college, maybe, but I love that this represented that success from someone who was my age, who actually made a thing and brought it forth into the world. It inspired me a lot in those
Hmm.
days to because at that point I hadn't really done much of anything, and so it inspired me to actually do some creating of my own. And
Hmm.
the music itself I find beautiful. Just even listening to it a couple times this week, it starts off strong. Like we talk about how I think first songs are really important, and I love this first song. This checks the song the lyrics box for me. Like it's not too poetic, but it's also poetic enough to be like interesting
Hmm.
imagery and also it's easy to understand the words. Keith's singing is very strong in this album, but he also has like another backup singer that he brings in to add a little flavor to it. It's not all the same song. Anyway, I have more to say, but I want to hear what you thought.
All right. Well, I mean, I think the thing you should know first is that I don't listen to a ton of folk. I mean, of all the things that I've given you over the course of this year, probably the only one that can comfortably be classified as folk is Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah,
Um,
a
and
little bit of who was the other guy that we were talking about? My boyfriend who ended up being sick from Illinois,
Sufjan Stevens.
Sufjan Stevens. Yeah, he's a little folky.
Yeah, I mean, folky, right? But it's pretty different from something like this. This is
Yeah,
mostly an acoustic guitar with a voice and some
right.
embellishments.
Which we don't listen to a lot of. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's not usually my jam. I would, if I was giving this a genre, I would call this sensitive singer-songwriter stuff. That's just, that's not an official term, but that's what I call things like this.
For sure,
And
yeah.
it does. I would say it starts off, yeah, pretty strong. He's lyrically, like, I think the appeal of this music is the lyrics. You know, uh, if you're not listening closely to what he's saying, I think this can very much just sort of fade into the background quite a bit, which is something that you've said a lot, and it's something that you kind of ding things for a lot. So I was actually kind of surprised when I listened to this that, if you're not paying attention to the words and what he's saying, I think a lot of these songs actually do sound, pretty similar. It's a male voice, an acoustic guitar, and then maybe some light percussion, a background singer. They're not like heavily orchestrated. It's a very light touch, right?
Yes, yes.
But it sounds beautiful. There is an aspect of his voice that I don't love, but it's pretty unique, and it's not bad objectively or anything. It's just there's like a gravelly tone to his voice that is not my jam.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's recognizable, and I'll give you that. And I can see, listening to his albums as it goes, his voice matures in that way, and so you get a little more of that as it goes.
mm,
And I think I'm with you where I do prefer his younger sound
okay.
um,
Yeah.
from this album. That's maybe why I like this album more.
Hmm.
But I can definitely see that.
Yeah. But I really like he's got a good sense of melody, right? These are pretty songs, and
Hmm.
they sound really good, and the recording is really high quality. I don't know if you know anything about how this was recorded, or anything, but it sounds really good. Like,
Yeah,
and he's a
yeah,
he's
it's
a
pleasant to
really
listen to.
yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry, I was gonna say in my ear pods, which are directly piping into my ears,
Yeah.
uh, which I don't think I've ever listened to it that way before. I was
Okay.
able to pick up a lot of subtlety in the just the little bongos or the way he turns a note with his voice or something like
Mhm.
that was a lot
Yeah,
of
and I've been painting the house this week, so I was also listening through headphones of one type or another, and it is really like nice stuff. I would say in this he's a competent guitarist, nothing too flashy. I'm actually curious how he has evolved over the years since then. Is he still releasing music these days, or
yeah. His last album is only I think last year.
okay. Okay. Like many of us, he recorded an album during the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot to like about this. I didn't find anything to love about this. There were a few songs that really stood out for me. The song "My Hometown" really stood out for me in a positive way. "Hope Fire" stood out. I think it's called "Hope Fire." He definitely uses the term "Hope Fire," but I forgot to look at my phone. Uh, and I liked that quite a bit. And then, there's a bunch of songs that to me sounded kind of samey, right? This type of songwriter is pretty much always going to address relationships, and there's a bunch of relationship type
A
songs
ton
in
of
in
relationship
in
songs. Yeah.
this. Yeah, and that's pretty typical. I mean, people in their early 20s write about relationships, and people who are sensitive singer-songwriter types typically write about
Yeah, well,
relationships.
it is I thought a lot about that, and it's actually one of the things I liked is that perspective on love that you have when you're in your 20s is very optimistic, I think, and very like all of these songs, and maybe that is one of the things I like about it is that all these songs kind of brim with an optimism towards love and
Mhm.
towards relationships, and I think about where I was at that age, and maybe not as optimistic as Keith was,
Mhm.
certainly until I was about 25 and finally was in a relationship. Um, and well, that's not even true. I don't even know. I'm not, I guess I'm forgetting about all the girls that I dated in college. Um, so, but the first song on the album is one of my favorites, and I've listened to it so much. And I
Yeah.
realized that I've actually used I used a couple of these songs in my first short film
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that I did, which I had completely forgotten about, and so it was really neat to hear those again. Um,
Yeah,
it's funny
I would
because
agree with you that that first song is really quite good.
yeah. The last song is a song called Bernadine, and I want to
Mhm.
talk to you about that a little bit because Bernadine Tomasik was the name of our English teacher at Lake Mills
Mm.
High.
Okay.
and she died at a fairly early age. I think she was 50-ish.
Okay.
And she died of a brain aneurysm. And it was very surprising to us. She was that cool teacher you have who has couches instead of desks
Mm,
in the English classroom, and you all
yeah.
sit in a circle on couches, and she's very and like she loved the color pink, and she bet me that I was going to be fat by the time I was 30 because I used to always bring my lunch in to eat and have like extra. You know how they in
Mm-hmm.
school they would give bread with like they'd put a big bucket of peanut butter and you could just have
Mm-hmm.
as much peanut butter bread as you wanted to fill up
Mm-hmm.
on. I would, and she bet me I was going to be fat. So anyway, that song I love so much, and I wonder if it was even close to as meaningful to you, not knowing who that person was.
Yeah, that was probably my least favorite song on the album, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just that I didn't connect with that song at all. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I've always kind of wondered that whether that would be, how that would appeal to someone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that one it does have a little more instrumentation than most of the song. Like some of these really almost have no percussion at all, and that one has like a full kit, and it's like so it's a little more up. I think if I was like a producer talking to Keith about this album, I would encourage him to write. And I know that he's recorded a bunch of stuff since then, and I'm sure he's done lots of different things, but I think that there maybe could have been more in terms of like pushing like more instrumentation or more like there's a lot of like kind of mid-tempo slow-ish songs here, something that kind of I mean that's the one thing about Bernadine, right, is that it is a little more up tempo, and for me it just didn't work, but I think the attempt was good, right, like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of hey, we do need to maybe get people a little more up and excited. I think there is I think when you're young with the guitar, which I am right now, it is always tempting to play at sort of slower tempos and kind of calmer things just because those are a little bit easier to play. Now he's a much better guitarist than I am, right? I'm
Yeah.
not accusing him of not being good at it, but just when you're learning, you do end up like kind of playing slow, and then sometimes that sort of transfers over to your songwriting, and sort of I think it maybe would have been a good idea to try to push tempos and do things that are a little more upbeat just to shake it up a little bit more.
Yeah. I'd be interested if you check out Journeyman, which is what when I asked Keith about this, he said that that was his favorite album of his own,
Hmm.
and I'd be interested to see if you think that any of the songs on there are more your taste, or are also more successful in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give it a
Talking about the
listen this
guitar
week for
work,
sure.
though, yeah, the guitar work on this, so you mentioned getting people up and getting excited. And I think that's not at all what this album is for, and probably not really what folk music is for in general. And I remember I described Gordon Lightfoot as kind of a massage to your brain.
Yeah.
Like when he starts singing, you kind of get this like calmness that just wraps itself around your brain and goes through your body. And I felt that a lot with this album too,
Hmm.
and I think that that's probably what it's for, and um, and I think for that reason, I is probably why I like listening to it
Yeah,
every so often.
I enjoyed the process of listening to or the experience of listening to this album. Like I wasn't like mad that you assigned this or anything. And I get why you do like it. And it frankly it has given me some ideas for things that I should probably assign you in the
Mm.
future. Uh
That'd be interesting to use that as a comparison because I wonder if the reason I like this so much is more because I know Keith and
mm,
and and care for him
mhm.
than am a fan of this kind of music. Because
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
listen to
know.
Tori Amos at all, or I don't know
Mhm.
who did the song that they play in the Dead Puppy or the Puppy
Sarah
Problems ads.
McLachlan.
Yeah, Sarah McLachlan. I never listened to Sarah McLachlan,
Mhm.
so I'd be curious to see what you come up with if based off that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And
All right.
suggestions from the audience if you have anything that you think I would like based on my love of this album or based on my love of any of the things we've listening to. Let us know. Exposing ourselves podcast at gmail.com.
All right.
You want to
Well,
give it a rating?
I do want to give it a rating. So I think this might be right down the middle for me. Like this is a good solid folk album, but not my bag and not I don't think there was anything that like super duper stood out like, oh man, I really want to hear right that song, right?
Right,
So
right.
this one's right down the middle for me. I think it's a 5.
All right, that's fair enough. And I've certainly felt, I get exactly what you're saying because I've certainly had that experience with other stuff that you've recommended that is more your type of music, where I'm like,
Mhm.
this just isn't something I would listen to. Um,
Yeah.
for me, this is one of my favorite albums. It's not perfect. There are a couple of songs that are not as much my favorites. Like it gets
Mhm.
to them, and I never skip a song,
Mhm.
but there are songs where I kind of like wait till it's done. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yeah.
But there are other songs that I'm just very excited. I love, "Love Comes Around." I think is the first
Oh,
song,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I love it does have a kind of tempo and rhythm that is almost a little mirrored from Bernadine at the end, where it starts kind of like a little bit faster than some of the other songs, and
Mhm.
I really like that kind of that rhythm. So I'm going to give this an. It's funny. I'm going to give it an 8
Okay.
because it also isn't the kind of music I would normally listen to, but it somehow transcends that for me, and I don't know fully if it's because I know the singer or if it's just because it's truly amazing. So,
Interesting. So we
it's just been
actually
part of my life for so long.
we each gave our own assignment an 8. That's fascinating.
Oh, okay, great, great. Well, that's
Cool.
good. Well,
Well, yeah, well, I wanted to say so we did
yeah.
get an email this week from a
Oh,
listener named Brian Wiga, I believe.
yeah.
And
I know Brian.
we had a good discussion about you, and we both decided that your opinions are awful. But we did come up with some really good.
Opinions can't be awful
Oh,
because they're
well,
opinions.
I didn't think they could, but then I started doing this podcast with you, and I realized that.
Oh man. Oh,
So,
you're making
let's
me
see.
wait. You're making me mad.
I like that. I like
That's
that.
that's a joke for our watchers, not just our listeners. You have
Yeah,
to watch to see
exactly.
to get that reference.
Um, so anyways, he recommended 90s Britpop album Park Life from the band Blur, and I thought that was a great idea. I really like Blur. Have you ever heard of Blur?
I've never even heard of them.
Well, you have heard them, I'm almost certain. Do you
Okay.
remember the song that goes, "Woohoo! Do 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 do
Yes.
do
Okay.
do
Got
do
it.
do"? That's
Woohoo! Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that's Blur. Now that's not on this album. We're gonna listen to an even
Damn it.
earlier album from them.
Okay.
Well, I already know you like that song. That's called song number 2. It's really good, but that's not this album. This is you're gonna listen to Park Life. One thing that I love about Park Life, other than that it's a pretty classic uh, Britpop album, is that there's greyhounds on the cover of it, racing greyhounds, which I have a
Oh.
bunch of, and so that's cute. But Blur was one of the biggest British bands of the 90s. There were Blur fans and there were Oasis fans. So you probably remember Oasis as well.
Yeah.
Wonderwall and What's the Story, Morning Glory, and a bunch of
Okay.
other big hits. But if you were not an Oasis fan, but you did like that sort of alternative music, you were probably a Blur fan. And this was their first big, I'm not sure if it was their first album, but it was definitely their first album that hit the US mainstream. And I want you to check it out and see what you think.
All right. I'm excited to do it.
So thank you to Brian Wiga for the suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Brian. And you all have our email address if you would like to make suggestions as well. So,
Wait, are you talking about exposing ourselves podcast at gmail.com?
I was. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me and them for that. So, would you like to know what I'm going to give you?
Yeah, I do really want to know after watching that movie. I'm curious what you're going to give me this week.
Well, have you seen Slumdog Millionaire?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna give that to you. Slumdog Millionaire is a 2008 British film. It's a drama, but it is a loose adaptation of the novel Q&A by an Indian author, Vikas Swarup, and it's a story of a young boy who in Mumbai, and in this movie it stars Dev Patel and was actually Dev's breakout role. It kind of made him a star because the movie itself was nominated and or won Best Picture.
Okay.
Oh, and I don't have it on me whether it won. We'll talk about that next week. But it's Danny Boyle who did a bunch of stuff like Train Spotting, and then he did 28 Days Later. He did Sunshine, and he has kind of a very interesting range of movies. And I love his movies for the most part. And then he did Slumdog Millionaire, and it was kind of a big hit. So I'd like to share it with you. I've only seen it once, I think, maybe
Wow.
twice. I remember
Okay.
liking it. And the thing that you probably will be familiar with is the dance song at the end was a big hit. Jai Ho. I can't
Yes,
believe I still remember
I
that.
do know the song Jai Ho.
That was from this movie. And so they do a big Bollywood dance number at the end
Well,
for it.
that's super duper exciting. Hey, Travis, this episode is going to come out on Christmas, so Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you.
And then our next episode is going to be episode 51, and it is going to be the final episode of season 1 of Exposing Ourselves.
Really? Do we even want to do episode 50? Oh, yeah. I guess we have to. We've already assigned each other the movies.
We sure have,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, so wait, episode 50 comes out on Christmas? The one we're
Well, it'll
recording
come
right
out
now?
on the 24th. Yeah. Episode
Christmas
50
Eve.
comes out on Christmas Eve.
Right, right. And so
Yeah.
episode 51 will be on the
New Year's
30.
Eve.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, man,
Wow.
it has been a year.
It has been a year.
We
What
should we
a
should spend a
literal
little
thing.
bit. Yeah, we should spend a little bit of the next episode talking about like the year in review, don't you
I
think?
think I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's try to we'll speed through some of these movies and music reviews and cut short our what did you do last week
Well, we could
stories.
also we'll figure it out, folks. I think you'll really enjoy whatever we expose
Oh,
ourselves to next week.
awesome.
We'll
Speaking
figure it out.
of, Matt, thank you for
Yes?
exposing yourself to me.
Well, Travis, thank you for exposing yourself to me. You have a lovely week.
You too. Love you. Bye.